Now, one of the studies that I found, which is fascinating, and I'll bring this up, done by Noam Gidron, James Adams, and Will Horn, and says how ideology, economics, and institutions shape effective polarization in democratic politics. It's a very nice report because what it does, it looks at all these countries and it creates a score for polarization. And using that score, so here's Frank Licata working stiff. Frank says, it's no different than sports such as the Boston Red Sox versus New York Yankees. Both sides say that the other side sucks. Coincidentally, one is red and one is blue. Yeah, thanks, Frank. They always have some color and they want the masses to be distracted. Now, this report by Noam Gidron, what it says is that it basically, first of all, it's got a very nice graph here. It looks at the range of polarization, and the United States is right about here. And there are other states which are even more polarized, but we're pretty polarized. And there are states less polarized than us and others. The next thing he did was he looks at the Gini coefficient on this graph right here, and he maps the Gini coefficient on the x-axis and the polarization. As the Gini coefficient increases, you see increased polarization. What is the Gini coefficient? If you haven't studied it, the Gini coefficient, I've talked about this before, the Gini coefficient is a measure of income inequality. Let me repeat that. The Gini coefficient is a measure of income inequality. So as income inequality rises, as unemployment rises, guess what? Polarization rises. Polarization rises as a function of economic inequities. So the real issue is economic inequities are taking place, and those in power want to distract you from that, so they have you fighting against your brother and your sister, whether they be quote unquote Democrat or Republican. That's what's actually going on. It's really, really simple. But we have to get our heads out of you know what? And it's so seductive to get caught into this. Oh, Trump is my man. Biden is an idiot, right? Or Biden is good and Trump is evil. And both of these sides are created, as Frank just said, like a sports game, like WWE wrestling, to keep you distracted so you operate on the animal consciousness level, not at a human consciousness level, and see these things. Our movement is the only movement on the planet Earth which is educating people beyond left and right, educating people to unite. And that is the way forward. And we have organized the infrastructure, we've organized the courses, we've organized the community. It's a movement, it's the science, and it's a community. And it's really up to you to take advantage of this. Otherwise, you're just going to be crying about the left wing and the right wing. We have to build this movement. Now, let me just remind you, what Noam Gidron ends his report with is this. Look what he says. He goes, if American unemployment levels, he's talking about the United States, revert towards their historic, let me read the whole thing. American unemployment levels are currently at a near 50-year low. Yet effective polarization in the U.S. appears to be at a post-war high. It remains moderate in comparative perspective. Yes, to other countries, it's relatively moderate, but it remains at a post-war high. If American unemployment levels revert towards their historic norms along levels associated with another recession, this development may further amplify inter-party hostility between Democrats and Republicans. While the future of American civic life will turn on many unforeseeable developments, this consideration highlights the challenges we confront as we struggle to build a more civil society. So just look at what he's concluding, which I agree with. Relatively, unemployment's at a 50-year low, but we're at a very high polarization. And what he's saying is, if the unemployment increases, imagine what's going to happen to the polarization. So we're fundamentally at a quote unquote a low unemployment level, relatively, but polarization is the highest it's been through post-war times. So what happens if the unemployment goes up? And this is why the elites are so into completely distracting the American working class, so they can keep that polarization going. So working people in this country will not unite, because the working people in the United States are the only working group in the world that has the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. And they want the American working class, which could lead the world working class. Repeat that again. The American working class has a potential to lead the world working class. They want them, the Second Amendment. So they want them disunited. They want to make this about violence. They don't want to make this about the underlying issue. Now, let me remind everyone that what was going on, does everyone remember what was going on before the 2020 quote unquote pandemic? Does everyone remember what was going on? And someone says this, why is it so hard to do right by people? I don't get it. Nothing happens spontaneously. Remember this, change will never occur spontaneously. It is organized. We have to organize it. We have to build it. No one gives us anything. No one ever gave me anything. No one ever gave you anything unless you grew it with a silver spoon. We've always had to fight for it, work for it.